Welcome to Audacity Works, a podcast inspired by and dedicated to the working artist, the creative entrepreneur, and generally, doing the damn thing. This exists on the premise that the world belongs to those who have the audacity to believe that their lives have value. This is for you. Welcome to Audacity Works. I am your host, Rachel Strickland, and this is episode number 126. This is by request, and it's kind of like there's a two-pronged question for this episode. And it's all kind of about why it's so hard to be happy and to do the things that you want to do. So in two parts, the first part is a question from my girl Helen, who says, I've spent the last 2 years dreaming about a contract and just landed it. So congratulations to Helen. But I don't know how to process this. It feels like in the future got here so quickly that I haven't caught up with myself yet, and I keep swinging between this isn't happening and they must have confused me with someone else and confused static sounds. And I thought this was a great request because it happens a lot. So the first prong of the question we're going to address today is, what do you do when your dreams come true? I hate that rhymed, but what are you going to do? Let's talk about it. Especially if you were raised in the United States, you have been raised on a diet very rich in dreams and fairy tales and being told to follow your dreams and follow your bliss and all that shit, and like dream big and you can do anything. And I'm not necessarily dogging on that, or maybe I am, but not in this episode, because today I just want to be really specific about what happens when your dreams do come true, because it's not usually what you'd think. You might think, well, I'd be happy. Well, maybe you will, but a lot of people aren't. And it's not because it's not as good as they thought it would be, although you're certainly going to come across some things that are like, wasn't expecting this to be a part of that dream. Okay. And as usual, I have a story time from my own life. The year was 2021, and I had just been awarded my first big girl residency. By big girl residency, I mean it had to go through a juried process. I had to submit examples, a real application, and be accepted. Now, this wasn't a paid residency, but it was thoroughly good. Like 3 weeks, dedicated space, whole theater to myself, whole dance room to myself. And all of the food was included. And if you were like, what is this magical residency? It's at the Atlantic Center for the Arts in Florida. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes in case that's not on your radar yet. And I'd had residencies before, but they were all bootstraps. Like, it was just me being audacious, like finding a studio owner that I connected with and pitching a residency to them and getting use of the space, usually in return for like a showing or something. So this was the first time I felt like I had been, it was really validating, right? I had been chosen. And I was ecstatic, of course, and so honored, and I felt humbled. And, I excitedly told my patrons about it. And then it's like, I felt this enormous amount of pressure to make every single moment very impactful in the residency, which meant I needed to show up with like all this material so that I could be really focused during my 3 weeks there and churn out something spectacular, like an entire full-length show within these 3 weeks. And I've built shows with people within like 2 weeks. So I knew that it wasn't impossible. Now, I didn't have a creation space at the time. I don't have one right now, but I will. Anyway, to do this bit of research, for the time that I was going to have at this residency, I decided to go out to the murder barn, which is just a big, old, creepy barn that came with our property. So I went through all my costumes, and I got the costume pieces that I wanted to be using, and I got it all set up, and I went out to the barn, and I pushed record on my phone, and I was like, well, fucking now what? And that was the moment that intense pressure just caved in on me, and I realized that I was scared shitless. Like, I was terrified. And I felt so much shame for being terrified, because here I was getting this splendid opportunity, and I had patronage that was cheering me on, and all of my friends were like, congratulations, you so deserve it. And then there I was sitting in a barn with no fucking idea what to do. And because, remember I said a second ago that I had pressed record on my phone? What ended up happening was that I sobbed and railed and ranted against myself for a solid 20 minutes. At the end of that 20 minutes, I screamed a scream so guttural and bloodthirsty that it frightened me. And I have that entire rant and rave on camera. I've only shown it to one person ever, which is Kat Doherty. And I think now that I'm talking into this microphone, I've decided that I'm going to share that rant with my patrons so that they can see what the inside of this moment can really look like. We're like, this is legitimately good news, right? You've gotten great news. You've been chosen for this thing. Your dreams have come true. And now you're left with the fallout of that good news, which is all the pressure that you're reflecting onto that future self to make absolute best use of every single fucking second. I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, but that amount of pressure doesn't really make good work. It makes good panic attacks. And if you fast forward to that October when I actually went to the residency, the thing that I did have prepared was that I followed my instincts, and Manflesh helped me to stitch together a 45-foot by 45-foot red chiffon skirt. I didn't know why I was making it. It was just something in my head. And like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to make it. I'm going to take it to residency. We're going to see what it's about. Well, we know what it ended up being about, because on that residency, I made Teeth, which is a 10-minute long dance and movement piece about early loss and life in a female body. Hits like a sledgehammer. It's not on a public link at the moment, but you know what? It should be. I'm going to make that link public, and I'm going to put it in the show notes. Please treat it with care. It can kind of hit like a sledgehammer. So don't take those content warnings lightly, all right? So when I actually showed up to that residency, one of the first of the other artists that I met was an older woman, and I was like, so what are you going to do with your time here? And she was like, I have no idea. I actually haven't made anything in like 15 years. And I was like, what? So there I was, torturing myself, like 5 months before the residency, and putting all this pressure on myself to like do my dream justice. And she's just casually busting up in here like, I don't know, I might make something, I might not. And there you have two very different ways of approaching an opportunity. One was the result of anxiety, and the other was the result of experience. I mean, she did have a great deal of experience, even though she didn't come prepared for jack shit. So that's the story time from my life about a dream coming true and it being, I mean, it was wonderful. right? But it was also like, what the fuck? And I'll also tell you that while I was on that residency, I was with my mentor, and the mentors like choose their people. And I thanked him. I was like, thank you for choosing me. And he looked at me all weird and he was like, what? I said, thank you for this opportunity. And he was like, you had a good application. Like, I didn't make a mistake. Like, I chose you on purpose. I'm like, well, he was clearly not from the school of performing artist. He was a performance artist, but from a very different background. Performance artists are like so good at imposter syndrome. It's really irritating. So, moral of the story, when your dreams come true and then it doesn't feel wonderful like you thought it would, it's probably the ego gap at work. The ego gap is the following. You are the current version of yourself. You're already at the table. You're already doing the thing. Your dreams have come true. It wasn't an accident. They didn't make a mistake by choosing you. But your ego is way more comfortable with who you were a year ago. Now that's the ego gap. And because our egos are, connected to our nervous systems, and they don't feel safe being this new expansive version of you, they're going to keep trying to pull you back to who you were a year ago because that is much safer. So if you are, like my friend Helen, in this period of adjustment in the ego gap between who you were a year ago and who you actually already are, you're just waiting for that time to close. Waiting for that gap to close. Waiting for your mouth-breathing ego to catch up with your present evolved self. And that happens with time, experience, and repetition. You don't need to do anything differently. Just do your work. Just do your work. And let yourself make mistakes. And let yourself live. Just where are your feet? Be where your feet are. So here's part 2 of this question. I met my friend the other day. I think I was just about to name her, but I think I won't because I didn't ask her permission first. And she listens to the podcast, and I was asking her about like how she was going with her own work. She's like, honestly, I'm avoiding it. Like I avoid it all the time and really procrastinate on it, even though when I engage with it, I'm really happy and I really like doing it. And like, let's discuss that. So prong 2 of this two-pronged episode is, why is it so hard to do the thing you want to be doing? And this isn't even about access, right? Let's assume you have access to the thing that you want to be doing, but you're still avoiding it. Why is it so hard? Like, you want to be doing it. Why is it hard to do something you actually want to be doing? There's some layers. So I consider the book, The Neverending Story, to be somewhat of a sacred text. I'm a child of the 80s, so yeah, that movie is also sacred. But I read the book when I was, 14, and I was like, oh my God, this is like biblical level sacred text to me, and I will die on that hill. And the book is so rich and like even richer than the movie, which is of course a classic. But there's also like darkness and like a haunting quality to the book. And in the book, Auryn is not like snakes all braided together. Auryn is an Ouroboros. I don't know how you say it. Anyway, a snake eating its own tail. And on the back of Auryn is the inscription, "Do what you wish." And when Atreyu receives Auryn from the childlike empress, and he looks at the inscription, and he's like, well, that's a weird inscription because like it's easy to do what you want. And the response is, actually, there's nothing harder in the world than to do what one truly wishes to do. And I was like, mind blown. Because it's true. So let's talk about like why procrastination is a thing. Procrastination is not the same thing as laziness. It is avoiding doing something, and I've read several studies that I cannot find, so I'm not going to link them. But essentially the takeaway is this. We don't procrastinate doing something because we don't want to do it. We procrastinate because there are emotions that come up when we do the thing, when we engage with the activity, that we are unable or unwilling to feel and process. Most notably, and at the very top of the list, is shame. And we procrastinate doing something because then when we engage with it, we have to admit that we haven't been engaging with it and feel like we've been wasting time and not doing a good job and wasting our lives and our talent. Or maybe we're just not very good at it yet, or we feel like we're not good at it yet, and that makes us feel shame too. And yeah, people can be real unwilling to feel those things, especially when it is linked arm in arm with the thing that we truly wish to be doing. That's a painful cognitive dissonance happening there. So then, what to do about it? Well, one thing is sure and certain. I know when it comes to processing unpleasant emotions like shame or anger or fear, I definitely know that avoiding them does not help the situation. It doesn't make them go away. It doesn't give you greater access to your work or your activity. The only way out is through. So if we pretend like it's not happening, it definitely does not get less. It actually gets more. So I guess the real action item here is to equip ourselves to process unpleasant emotions that come with doing the thing that we truly wish. So since we started this talking about shame, let's continue. And who better to give us a quote on shame than Brené Brown, who is a shame researcher. So here's what Brené Brown has to say about shame. If you put shame in a petri dish and cover it with judgment, silence, and secrecy, you've created the perfect environment for shame to grow until it makes its way into every corner and crevice of your life. Can confirm, Brené. The quote continues, if, on the other hand, you put shame in a petri dish and douse it with empathy, shame loses its power and begins to wither. Empathy creates a hostile environment for shame, an environment it can't survive because shame needs you to believe you're alone and it's just you. And that's from her book, Dare to Lead. I found a quote, a URL with that quote. I'll put that in the show notes. So, put shame in a petri dish with judgment, silence, and secrecy. Your shame is going to get bigger. But if you put it in a petri dish with empathy, it can't survive. I would add that what probably goes on to be discussed in her book is that it's not just self-empathy, because remember the first of those 3 ingredients to make shame grow included silence and secrecy. So I'm going to say a really good piece of medicine here, if you're trying to process unpleasant emotions, is not just to try and love yourself through it, but talk about it. Talk about it with empathetic people who love you. And I know at least half of you are like, I'm not doing that. We're all adults. You can make your own choices. It's just a suggestion on my end because I know that it works for me. And ignoring it and being quiet about it definitely does not do me any favors. But yeah, isn't that annoying that the solution is talk about it with your friends? Or your therapist if you prefer, or both. I like to take the both approach. So here's the episode today, right? We've got dreams coming true, and we've got identified activities that we love and what we really wish to do. And both of those things make us feel ways that are not good. Oh, this doesn't feel good. My dreams came true. Ooh, now I've got all these other feelings. Or there's this thing I really want to do, but doing it makes me feel all these feelings. Yeah, I feel you. It's not your fault. Do you know human beings are poorly designed for happiness? We have these massive brains that we can't even begin to grok the scope of our own cognitive powers. Now, that's cool, but like with these huge, enormous brains comes existential angst because we're self-aware. This is the double-edged sword of having a huge brain that is self-aware. I mean, think back to when is the first time that you felt existential angst? Because I was 7. I'm like, oh my God, what does all this mean? But of course, I didn't have the language for that because my brain hadn't gotten there yet. So yeah, congratulations on your huge brain, and I'm sorry about the existential angst that comes with it. We really, really crave feeling safe, and feeling safe and being fulfilled aren't necessarily complementary things. There's that cognitive dissonance again. Like, we want to fulfill our visions and we want to achieve and we want to have an impact on the world, or at least our communities. And none of those things are safe. None of those things are safe. And they will always require your courage and your higher evolution and your willingness to experience productive emotional discomfort. Congratulations, I'm sorry. And just like to note, do you remember the blood-curdling scream I told you about earlier in this episode that happened when I attempted to do some research for my residency? That scream actually made it into the piece. It made it into teeth. So if you go to the show notes, and if you're on the Patreon, first of all, thank you. And by the time this episode airs on Wednesday, March 26th, that post will be up and live. So you'll get to see that whole rant. It's going to be a vulnerable share on my part. But you know, that's what we do here. And I'm also going to make teeth public for the first time. So feel free to, watch those things. And thank you in advance if you do. I'm looking at the time. I have passed the 20-minute mark, and I want to thank you for spending this time with me and letting me talk into your ears. And thanks to Helen and my friend who has gone nameless for inspiring this podcast. If you have requests for future episodes, you can reach me always on Instagram at Rachel Strickland Creative or on Patreon at Rachel Strickland Creative. This podcast is powered by Patreon. And I gotta tell you, I don't know what I would do without the Patreon. Like literally, like, well, now what do I do? So thank you for believing in me and for standing with me and making this podcast possible and all the other things possible. And if you enjoyed this episode, the best compliment you could give me would be to share it with someone who you thought it could help, or to support the podcast on Patreon. Both of those actions so welcome, and thank you for being here. I'm going to end this with a benediction from Auryn, like straight from the Childlike Empress. Do what you wish, and don't go back to sleep.